The Count of Chateaubriand knew that his 13-year-old wife was incredibly beautiful. Rumors of her beauty had already swept through all of France. Even Francis I himself, damn him, demanded that the Count bring his wife to court, insisting that the most beautiful ladies must be among us. The Count of Chateaubriand was only 9 years older than his wife. When Françoise de Foix was 10 years old, the Count abducted his fiancée, with her consent, of course. At 10 years old, Françoise was already betrothed to the Count. At 13, she gave birth to his daughter, and a year later, she officially became the Countess of Chateaubriand. The minimum legal age for a Catholic bride was 12. Jean de Chateaubriand was delighted. He adored his wife. Such a treasure had fallen into his lap. In faraway Chateaubriand, the couple lived happily, knowing little of sorrow. And young Françoise had no idea that not far from her, there was a place where any beautiful girl could become an unofficial Queen of France. Word of Françoise's beauty soon reached the king. Francis I was intrigued. The athletic monarch knew how to appreciate female beauty. Soon the king ordered Count Chateaubriand to present his wife at court. After all, how could anyone hide such a charming lady away in a manner like a prisoner? The Count was disheartened. He understood that before the charming Francis I, few women could resist. Every lady at court dreamed of becoming the king's mistress. There was even a legend. The jealous Count devised a trick with a ring to circumvent the monarch's order. He warned his wife in advance. If the letter that came to her contained no ring, she was to stay at the chateau. But if the letter included a ring, she was to rush to court. By that time, Françoise had grown up and learned a few feminine tricks. With the help of a few gold coins, she bribed servants to steal her husband's ring. According to another version of the story, Francis I himself had a copy of the ring sent to her. And so, the shocked Count Chateaubriand stood at the gates of the royal palace, watching with disappointment as a carriage from Chateaubriand arrived. The luxurious 20-year-old woman caused a sensation in Amboise. Françoise charmed all the courtiers with her youth, beauty, and gentle nature. All noblemen turned their attention to the petite brunette with flawless snow-white skin and sly, almond-shaped eyes, like a fox. But no one dared court her. She was clearly the king's prey. Francis I immediately fell in love with the enchantress. Françoise did not give in right away. For some time she kept the king at a distance, hoping that her inaccessibility would only deepen his desire. She was right. But one day she gave in. Francis was incredibly gallant, indulging the Countess of Chateaubriand's every whim. Before long, Françoise noticed she felt a flutter in her heart when she saw the king. Could it be love? She had planned only to gain jewels and social position. Soon, the Countess of Chateaubriand became the king's official mistress. Her husband was crushed, understandably so. He had protected his treasure precisely from this fate. As moral compensation, the Count of Chateaubriand received titles, land, and a modest pension. But how could that ever compare to a wife's fidelity? I don't think it could. I don't consider Françoise a model of virtue. She was unfaithful to her husband, and she did not remain loyal to the king either. But Francis didn't mind. He himself enjoyed the company of many lovely ladies at court. Françoise remained the king's mistress for 10 years. She had considerable influence over Francis I, though she never concerned herself with politics. This deep attachment displeased the king's mother, Louise of Savoy. It was through Louise that Françoise eventually fell from favor. Francis turned his attention to a younger court lady, 18-year-old Anne de Pisseleu. The rivalry between the two women lasted about 2 years. Françoise withdrew. She was fighting for love, not power. Francis offered the countess a role in the background. She refused. She knew she had lost. Françoise returned to her husband's estate. This time, the count was disappointed that his wife had lost her place as royal mistress. After 10 years, Chateaubriand had grown quite wealthy thanks to the French crown. Several years later, Francis I passed with his entourage near the Chateaubriand estate, located west of Paris. Memories of 10 years with Françoise flashed before his eyes. After all, he had truly loved her. Following the impulse of his heart, Francis decided to stay at the estate for a few days. The visit lasted 3 weeks. During that time, the king resumed a short affair with Françoise and gifted her husband a bit more land. Francis I knew how to take care of his former lovers. Anne de Pisseleu was soon married off to the Duke of Étampes, a title given solely through the king's favor. It is believed the king wanted his mistress to hold a duchess's title, so she could enjoy the right to sit on a stool at court and ride her carriage all the way up to the palace doors, not just the gates. I don't think Anne ever loved the king. Unlike Françoise, Anne loved power, status, and money. One day, at her request, the king demanded that Françoise return all jewelry engraved with affectionate messages. To me, it seemed Anne was trying to spite the king's old flame. But Françoise de Chateaubriand was wiser. 10 years at court had taught her how to answer insults with elegance. She had all the gifted jewelry melted down into gold bars. The countess didn't want to give the king trinkets engraved with words that had once been addressed to her. It was unbearable to imagine another woman wearing them. Francis I was stunned by her act. He was ashamed. I behaved like a petty man, thought Francis. As an apology, he returned the gold bars and sent Françoise a sum of money equal to the value of the melted jewels. In my view, Françoise de Chateaubriand was a harmless royal mistress. She didn't interfere in politics and wasn't a major figure of the 16th century. I believe that, in some ways, she deserves sympathy. She found happiness with Francis, but met her end with her husband. According to one version, it was the jealous Count of Chateaubriand who, 5 years after the king's final visit, took revenge on his wife. One final note: different books describe Françoise's hair color in completely different ways. Some say Françoise was as blonde as Anne, while others describe her as a tall, dark-haired woman. Even in portraits and sketches, her hair color appears inconsistent.